Greetings everybody, and a warm welcome to all fans, friends, and collectors of comic books and comic book popular culture. I'm CaptainStrangelife, and this is my intro video to the Comic Community Central, known as the Triple C for shorts. I mean short. Speaking of shorts, Triple C sounds kind of like a tons of fun pair of underpants, so I'm just going to call it the CCC. You see, I've been hooked on collecting comic books and fantasy-related popular culture, especially as it relates to the 1950s and 60s, ever since my mother, bless her heart and her soul, purchased for me my first comic book. And I have to get into Peabody's Wayback Machine here and go way back to 1961. And oh, it was a different time then. Life was simpler. Society was less crime-ridden and less stressful. Don't get me wrong, we weren't without our societal ills, as many of you can probably testify to, but life was easier and generally less complicated. I mean, this was a time of soda fountain parlors and roller skating rinks and drive-in movie theaters, diners, hamburger joints, and where kids would get together in these hamburger joints and listen to music being played on 45s and scenes similar to this. This is a Dexter Comics number 4. This is 10 years earlier than 1960 from that era, but it didn't, things didn't change much in those hamburger joints and diners. They all had their jukeboxes, and kids went there and danced to the music that was being played on 45s inside those jukeboxes, like this. Elvis Presley, it's 1960. We got Bobby Darin would be on those jukeboxes, and Ricky Nelson. And then from 1961 we would have, and these are reissues, the other ones were originals, what I just showed you, but this is a reissue. It's the Coasters' Little Egypt from 1961. This is what would be on those jukeboxes. And stuff like Sam Cooke, Cupid was a big hit, 1961. And comic books. Well, comic books, they were everywhere. They were sold in candy stores and in neighborhood, the little neighborhood grocery stores, and the corner drugstores. They were sold through the mom and pop variety shops that were also everywhere. And I remember on my corner where I lived on Roscoe and Horn in Chicago, on that one block there were 3 mom and pop variety shops, and they all had spinner racks like the one you see behind me, filled with comic books. Even our local 5 and dime store, the Woolworths, where my mother used to take me to the long lunch counter to buy me banana splits, they had comic books, although I didn't know it at the time. And as a matter of fact, I was able to pull down a 1960 and 61 menu off the internet, which is the exact same menu that I used to look at when my mother took me there to that long lunch counter. Banana splits for 39 cents, and they had the American grilled cheese sandwiches for 30 cents. They had coffee that was only 8 cents for a cup of coffee. And of course, comic books were also sold through the newsstands. And it was at one such newsstand while I was in possession of my mother, because she was never in possession of me. Actually, that's not true. I was an exemplary child. I was perfect, as pure as the driven snow. Well, that's not true either. I was an average child, but fairly well behaved. And anyway, it was at one such newsstand that my eyes enlarged to the size of tomatoes, you know, like the eyes of those aliens in that Mars Attacks movie. Remember that Mars Attacks movie from 1996? My eyes were like that. And by the way, that Mars Attacks movie was based on the 1962 Mars Attacks trading cards, like this. My eyes also grew that big whenever I saw, you know, beautiful blonde women in red dresses, which seemed to be everywhere in the comic books. But anyway, they got so big that for a moment I actually thought that they were going to leave the very warm and comfortable nook of their sockets, because there, behind the newsagent's counter on either left and right sides, and if I'm not totally mistaken here, I think on the back wall of that newsstand, there were these racks, and upon the racks were carefully placed and strategically located kid magazines, rows and rows of these kids magazines that were just bursting forth in all these rich, vibrant colors on their cover, and they were exploding with these wonderfully strange and bizarre characters. And anyway, my mother came there for a newspaper, but I had to have one of those kid magazines, and she obliged me by pulling a coin out of her change purse and paying the man 10 cents in silver. And yes, silver coinage at the time in America was made out of silver, with the exception of pennies and nickels, and paid him with a shiny new coin in the form of a dime, just like this one from 1961. And I watched as this shiny coin, as she placed it into the hands of the newsagent, and he put it in this, he had this belt on, his leather belt with these different pouches, that each pouch would hold different coinage, you know, from pennies to $half. And he reached for one of those kid magazines, and my mother nodded with approval, and he pulled that down and handed it to me, and then for the first time I held in my hands a comic book, a glorious comic book. It was a hot stuff comic book, not unsimilar to these, from a company called Harvey. Now, I had been familiar with these characters from Harvey from watching them on the cartoons and television, but back then we didn't have black and white television, so, I mean, we didn't have color television, everything was in black and white, so I had never seen these characters in color before, and here they were, bursting forth in full color. And upon opening this precious manuscript, the fantasy illustrations that were inside, they just overwhelmed me. They captivated me to a point where they caused a lifelong passion for these magnificent four-color wonders. Anyway, I'm glad that my mother obliged me by allowing me to have one of those kid magazines. Here at the CCC, this is a place for us comic book culture collecting enthusiasts to come together and revel in our sweet addiction via the videos that we upload and share here. And with such a variety of channels and videos to choose from, I'm certain that even the most discriminating fan will find something to satisfy the palate. So, well, let's see, my videos here are will be in the same vein as the videos that I upload on my personal channel, and yet they will be completely different videos. For me, comic book collecting and by extension fantasy-related popular American culture, especially as it pertains to the 1950s and 1960s, is a lot about the history and nostalgia. So if you are interested and you like some of the channels here, I would suggest you consider subscribing and following me on my personal channel and here at the Comic Community Central with all my friends. If you're so inclined, of course. But if you do subscribe, I'm sure you'll be glad that you did. So, I don't think I have anything else that I can offer right now at the time, but I should be uploading something on my personal channel pretty soon. But at any rate, this was my intro, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you again soon. May you all be happy and be well. Take care.